I think that the course of my sort of 57 years has been a kind of, I think for a lot of people my age perhaps, has been a gradual education about our relationship with America. I certainly grew up thinking that it was like the cliche about it's Rome to Britain's Greece, you know, it's like the younger, crasser empire where everything glamorous was happening. I certainly grew up bewitched by the sense that America was glamorous and full of possibility, which isn't at all original, but it's a hard dream to shake off. And it's increasingly, over the last, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years, you see the election of people to power, or the rise of people to power that doesn't seem to be anything to do with the history of progressive civilization since the Renaissance. There seems to be something else entirely, and I certainly grew up with a sort of childish sense that America was somehow a liberal country, and I was probably fooled into that by the language thing, but they use English. They don't use it quite as well, but you know, they use it in their own way, and that sort of youthful, naive fascination.
Mm-hmm. Well, my first encounters with the States were when I was quite young. I went to teach archery in a summer camp, bizarre but true, in Vermont, and I did that for 2 months, and then I hitchhiked down to Tennessee, down the eastern seaboard. As Glyn was saying, I think we're all sort of entranced at some point by the open road and the endless frontiers of America. And I was then, as a 20-year-old. And it's taken me a very long time to shake that off. The American dream has finally been shaken off Robertson. And that's because, as Glyn has said, the dream has corroded, and America has split into two pieces, and I think they're almost irreconcilable at the moment.
I was struck by, I mean, it's in your book, it's in stuff I've written, that sense of America as dream. You know, not the American dream, but America as kind of a dream of a European. Like in dreams where, I don't know if this is true of everyone, but I assume that this is a common thing, that you dream a version of your garden from childhood, but it's enormous or something, but it's on a slope, but it's by the sea, you know, that things expand. And somehow, I think in America, I found a lot of those locations that were elongated versions of my own dreams. I think that's how we investigate the history as well, and the film does that, of course. How that affects our literature, I don't know. America still speaks opportunity to people because that dream takes forever to shake off. So it's not, in a way, it's not surprising that American poetry has been experimental, and I would never be hostile to experimentation in anything, just as a human principle. I think it's when the journey to the most extreme experimentation becomes its own establishment, becomes its own default.
I haven't had to, I mean, I've met Matteo and like him very much, but we did a certain amount of email correspondence over the translation of his translation of The Long Take, and it all seemed to be very sensible and convivial, and it was very different from my first experience of being translated. And I won't mention any names, but the translator was in Britain. He said he'd be in Britain, and could we meet to discuss the translation? And I was really busy, and I apologized, said we haven't got time. And then I panicked, and I thought, oh my God, I should be making time, because what if he gets it wrong? And so I phoned him up, and I just said, can I go through the poems just to make sure that you've got the story right, you've got the right end of the stick. And so we came to this this poem, and it was about a ruined Scottish school, very damp, full of damp books, and creatures called silverfish, which are tiny little insects that live in damp conditions, usually books. And I said to this translator on the phone, so silverfish, you understand what I mean, these insects which live inside damp books. And there was a terrifying pause which lasted about a week. And then he said, I thought you meant anchovies.
I've got a very strange relationship with translation. My favorite piece of writing, prose writing in the world, is Mandelstam's conversation about Dante. And I just remember him saying about Italian, here everything rhymes. So I would imagine it would be fun to translate me into Italian. But a friend of ours, Armitage, the English poet, said to me, Max, you're untranslatable. So I think perhaps I'll settle for being untranslatable. I'm fascinated by translation. I am actually one of the translators of Joseph Brodsky, which is interesting news to Russian people, who then ask me things in Russian, which I don't know at all. But I did know him. And I always imagine, this is a peculiar translation story, but just to say that I feel confident to translate Brodsky because I knew him and because I get very accurate interlinears from people who were around, who knew him much better, or were around in the 60s and 70s when these early poems were written. And because I know for a fact that he'd want it to sound as much like Auden as possible. So that's just sort of what I can shoot at without ever hitting the archery target. I can at least, shoot at that. So but it's a specific example where translation is rendered possible by life circumstances. It's unusual. So I've done quite a lot of translation work for somebody who only speaks English. And I had a very good experience with the Dürrs Grünbein, a terrific German poet, when we were both much younger and were invited to do projects like that, where we sat together for a couple of hours and translated each other, and that was great fun. That was what I always hoped it would be like, with somebody who, because there was a lot of give, a lot of like, oh yeah, that's a way of doing it in English, which isn't the same as the German, but it's another way that kind of has the same flavour to it. I like that kind of thinking in translation. I think that's how it should be. So yeah, I've had some good experiences. That's all.